Hi, everyone. It's Ian Bremmer here, and we have a new installment of The Red Pen.
The Red Pen.
This week, Senator Josh Hawley, he's a Republican from Missouri and actually the youngest sitting member of the Senate at age 40, writes in the New York Times that the World Trade Organization, the WTO, should be abolished. Let's look at his argument. First, Hawley criticizes the WTO for what he says it does, which is manages the global economy, often against American interests. That implies the WTO is some strong, autonomous institution, when in reality, it's a forum of nation states, and the vast majority of their decisions are actually made by consensus. So really, it's not a leader. It's not even a manager. At best, it's an arbiter. And it's very hard to blame the WTO for a lot of the U.S. economy's ills. I mean, globalization and technological advancement and innovation have done at least as much to disrupt American industries as free trade itself has. Let's also focus on Hawley saying that the WTO didn't actually promote free trade. Says that actually the tariffs didn't go down. It didn't promote free trade. The organization instead allowing nations to maintain trade barriers and protections workarounds. But if we look at the facts, if you look between 1947 and 1996, average tariff levels fell by 50%. And between 96 and 2018, tariff levels fell by another 20%, bringing global tariff levels down to historic lows, building efficiency and allowing the American economy to drive extraordinary amounts of wealth. And that didn't come at the expense of jobs. Actually, during the WTO tenure, the U.S. created millions of new jobs. Furthermore, Hawley says that the United States is unable and prevented from defending themselves because of the WTO. I mean, not only does the United States defend itself, but actually the U.S. has brought far more cases to the WTO than any other country. And the United States wins the vast majority of cases that it's brought. So, I mean, not a surprise. An institution that the United States set up with American values, American standards, American allies to support a regulated free market system that was the American way of doing business with its corporations. It should not surprise anyone that actually most of the cases are brought by the U.S. and the Americans actually win. Finally, Hawley says that given the WTO's failures and Chinese imperialism, the best choice is to get rid of it. And I certainly am very sympathetic with the senator that frustrations with Chinese trade practices are very valid. It is a state capitalist, authoritarian government. And as a consequence, there is massive intellectual property theft. There's all sorts of major subsidy that goes on from the state for their national champions, even for privately owned corporations that benefit from targeted lower credit and absence of rule of law. That's all true. But abandoning the WTO is simply going to create more space for the Chinese to get outcomes that they want. It's like abandoning the Trans-Pacific Partnership allowed China to have lower standard deals that determine more of what happens with trade in Asia, like RCEP, as opposed to higher standard deals that the Americans would promote and the Chinese would have to either adapt towards or they wouldn't be a part of it. Walking away from the WTO has costs. We've learned painfully in the past, like with the League of Nations. And it's also today like saying getting rid of the World Health Organization. No one loves the organization, but the Americans are unwilling to have a strong WHO. And the reason for that is because the Americans who give the most money would be unwilling to have an organization that could criticize American practices. So we don't let it. And as a consequence, it's a weaker organization. But as former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld might say, you go to trade war with the WTO you have, not the WTO you want. I think the senator should brush up on his Rumsfeld. See you guys next week.